Hi, thanks for coming to my talk. I'm going to be discussing some of my research into the effects of volcanic arc migration on the style and chemistry of activity at individual volcanic centers, which I've been doing using the Atitlán Volcanic Center in Guatemala. Within the Central American volcanic arc, migration has been occurring since at least the Oligocene. Atitlán lies in the northwestern section of the arc. The tephra plot in the bottom right of this slide compares the activity of the whole of the Central American volcanic arc with the Atitlán Center over the last 24 million years. There is a rough correlation here between periods of elevated activity across the entire arc and at Atitlán. I'd like to be able to convince you that, at least for Atitlán, these pulses are timed with periods where the arc has migrated. The central Guatemalan section is the best place in the arc to study this. Most of the volcanoes here show evidence of long and short-term systematic migration, where an older volcanic structure lies north of a younger, either as paired cones like Volcán de Fuego with Volcán Acatenango, or where large caldera structures lie immediately to the north of the presently active arc front, like at Atitlán or Amatitlán. Atitlán is the best preserved center of this section, and so presents the best opportunity for study. At least 3 phases of activity have occurred here in the last 14 million years, where a phase is defined by a period of stratovolcano activity, followed by voluminous explosive eruptions of silicic magmas. These created the Atitlán 1, 2, and 3 calderas, and I focus on the most recent third phase. This started over 1 million years ago with the formation of the Phase 3 stratovolcanoes, which are also shown on this map. These are Volcán Tecolote, Volcán San Marcos, and Volcán Paquisis. The position of Paquisis highlights this migration, and its age suggests that this occurred over 400,000 years ago. The caldera lies roughly in between the old and new lines of stratovolcanoes, and formed after the VEI-8 Los Chicóes eruption 75,000 years ago. Several other pumice eruptions occurred around this time, the W pumice preceding it, and the D2, F, and I pumices afterwards. Published zircon ages from these eruptions show that these magmas started accumulating over 200,000 years ago, similar to the timing of the migration. These are a couple of plots showing the geochemical variation of the rocks of the system. I've included analyses of a rhyolite glass that is found in large volumes in cumulate xenoliths found within the lavas of Volcán Tecolote, as well as an enclave that was found within the I pumice. All but the F pumices show evidence of mingling with less evolved magmas. However, only within the I eruption were samples found that we were able to separate and analyze for whole rock composition. The total alkali silica diagram shows that these rocks are pretty standard compositions for arc lavas. For the stratovolcano rocks, the Phase 3 and 4 compositions plot along a similar trend, although the Phase 3 rocks extend to higher silica compositions. This plot also shows that there are some significant compositional variations between the pumice eruptions, and even within the Los Chicóes pumice. The potassium plot shows there are also significant variations within the andesites. Some of the more evolved lavas of the Phase 3 group extend into the high potassium calc-alkaline series. Significantly, the high potassium Los Chicóes pumices also plot in this region. The high potassium andesites often contain the mentioned cumulate xenoliths and lie on the shown mixing line between the very high potassium rhyolite glasses observed in them and a moderately potassic, less evolved andesite. As the high potassium Los Chicóes magmas also lie in this region of the plot, it's likely that unless there is another unknown cause for the potassium enrichment, they are also the result of contamination with these very high potassium rhyolite liquids. Analyzing glass compositions of the rhyolites allows us to make comparisons of their chemistry while reducing the effects of crystal accumulation. Using this, we argue that the previously identified low potassium group of the Los Chicóes eruption should probably be split into low and medium potassium groups. This is both because of the potassium variation shown within their glasses and because of their mineralogies. The high and low potassium magmas contain only biotite or 2 amphiboles respectively as their major ferromagnesian silicic phases, whereas the medium potassium magma contains both biotite and cummingtonite amphiboles. The rare earth element profiles of the Los Chicóes magma provide further evidence to the story. The low and mid potassium magmas have steep profiles, whereas the high potassium magma has a significantly flatter profile with a strongly developed negative europium anomaly. This variation in pattern could be due to differences in fractionating minerals, as amphibole fractionation would produce a steeper profile compared to biotite. Assimilation of the very high potassium glasses could also have an effect, but this will need to be confirmed by obtaining their glass trace element compositions. This plot also suggests that the low and mid potassium magmas could be cogenetic due to their almost identical profiles. If this is the case, the presence of cummingtonite over other amphibole species is strong evidence that the medium potassium magma was stored at lower temperatures, and this and the slightly elevated silica composition suggests it's a derivative of the low potassium magma. We undertook an isotope study to try and constrain the inputs that went into forming the Atitlán pumicles. These are the results of the first batch of samples, and they show a pretty interesting trend. The phase 3 lavas show much more radiogenic signatures compared to both the subsequent pumicles and the phase 4 stratovolcanoes. However, apart from lavas from Volcan Atitlán, the youngest and furthest south of the phase 4 volcanoes, the pumicles lie right in between the two phases. This suggests that these pumicles, if they are derived from similar magmas to those that fed the stratovolcanoes, have had input from both phases. So this puts the pumice magmas in the middle of a lot of things. Firstly, this map of the system shows that it lies in the middle of the two lines of stratovolcanoes. Second, published ages for these eruptions show that the rhyolite bodies were assembled after the migration of the ark's location to its present state and in between phases of stratovolcano activity. So as far as we can tell, their petrogenesis occurs in the transition time around the shift from the ark's old location to its new one. Finally, our isotope study shows that the pumicles lie in the middle of the isotope array. As it is, this evidence makes it likely that the magma system that formed these pumicles formed as a result of the migration event. This just leaves us with a number of questions about exactly what mechanisms arc migration has that would result in the formation of very large volumes of evolved magmas. One influence could be due to the impact of edifice load. It's been suggested that the stress field induced by a stratovolcano's mass can have a control on the propagation direction of ascending dikes. This could result in magma being captured if it is ascending through a region approximately twice the size of the edifice's radius. If this is occurring as the magma source in the lower crust is migrating, then magmatism could be occurring in the region between the old and new lines of stratovolcanoes without significant surface expression. This magmatic system would continue to be fed by magma from various sources, including partial melts from the mid to upper crust and primitive melts from the lower crust. Eventually, various highly evolved magmas are extracted from this region and are erupted. We've shown that there are temporal, spatial, and geochemical relationships between arc-front stratovolcanoes and their migration and the formation of large volumes of rhyolite magmas at the Atitlán volcanic center. These crystal poor rhyolites were likely extracted from a mush system that formed in the intermediate space between the old and new lines of stratovolcanoes. The differences in the rhyolites of the Los Chicores eruption are significant and may have been caused by assimilation of a very high potassium rhyolite liquid, suggesting that assimilation as well as crystal fractionation were important in the formation of these magmas. Thanks for listening, and huge thanks to my supervisors and all of my collaborators. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take them now, or you can contact me after.